So first question, repeal Obamacare, right?
Yes.
Yes, twice.
Yes. Yes. Second question, end Social Security because it's not authorized by the Constitution, right?
Yes.
No. No.
No.
Third question, end the Federal Reserve, right?
Yes.
If it's yes, no, probably a no.
Yes.
No.
Next question, shut down the Department of Education, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes, and yes.
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 Next question, pass a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Next question, legalize recreational marijuana at the federal level.
Yes.
No. No.
No.
And the next question is not a yes/no question, but I'm going to wrap up with this using the moderator's prerogative. What should be the federal minimum wage? Please cite a figure. Ray?
Free markets. There shouldn't be a federal minimum wage standard.
Thank you. Paige?
Whatever it is right now, I'd leave it.
You? Michael?
It should be zero. The feds have no role in something that belongs to the states.
Thank you. Kurt?
Michael's right. States decide.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Ray. What is your position on gay marriage, and should there be a constitutional amendment defining marriage as a union of one man and one woman?
No. It's the libertarian notion of, as an adult, you're free to choose who you live with, what you eat, what you drink, what you chew, what you smoke, as long as you're not harming another person. So the notion that we would take 10%, 15% of our population and somehow make them less of a citizen and not allow them the rights and freedoms that the other 85% enjoy, I somehow find un-American.
Thank you, Paige.
I was raised believing that a marriage did consist of a man and a woman, and that's what my marriage consists of. However, the Supreme Court has taken that off of our plate, so that's really not an option. As far as a constitutional amendment, we need to get real, folks. We don't even have a budget in this country. We can't even pass a budget. The idea of getting 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to agree on something like that is not something worth expending energy for. I do have 35 seconds left, and unfortunately, I'm the guy who had a lot of competing obligations this afternoon, so I'd just like to say,
In fact, before you say that, I'd like to grant you an extra 90 seconds for a closing statement now, if you'd like it.
I won't take all that time because these gentlemen need to talk to. I want to thank you once again for taking the effort and the energy and spending the gas money to come out to these forums. It means you people care, you give a darn, which seems to be a lot more than a lot of people in this country do. There's no apathy in this room. I don't have to ask you to get out and vote because I know you're going to. I want to thank you once again for listening to all of us here, and we'll see you in the next forum. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Paige, before you leave, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, and I will thank you again. Thank you for keeping this civil, and thank you for keeping it snappy. This next question is going to start with Michael.
You didn't let me answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, please continue.
Not that I really want to answer. It's a difficult one from depending on where you stand on the issue. And this is about the same-sex marriage, right? I believe that marriage is something that is sacred. I believe that. I've believed that of my entire life. And it belongs between a man and a woman. Now, I'm presently not married, but I've been with my female partner for 11 years, right? But that's a personal choice. And I think when we have partners, regardless of their gender and yours, that's a personal choice, right? I don't think, it's been a very divisive issue for our people, and I think it's been so divisive, we're not focusing on what's more important right now. Issues like our economy, our defense, our education, you know, our infrastructure. So this is a topic that I would like to see out of the federal courts altogether, out of the headlines. People live your life, be happy. This is a great country. You don't need to have a tax write-off for this. You can engage in civil unions already that allow you to have all the contracts in place to give you access. It's called a living will. So, you know, it's a difficult one, but it doesn't belong in the feds.
Thank you. Kurt?
Marriage, one man, one woman.
Thank you. This next question will be for Michael. What is your position on Common Core?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm just kidding. No, come on, folks. This is the federal boot on our back. Right? This is a bunch of bureaucrats. Bureaucrat is an unelected government official telling us what we're going to have and what we're not going to have as far as content structure and delivery. Right? I just yesterday, one of my constituents shared with me a story about his daughter coming home from high school because his daughter was taught something in a civics class, and the teacher said, "Hey, students, I got to let you know, the textbook says this, but that's not true. Really, only 40% of Americans pay taxes, not 100%, right? So the textbooks, as long as they're controlled by people outside of the local level, will always reflect who's ever in power at that level. And this happens to be the federal government. I choose to support my local school board. Let the local school board decide because we know who they are. They're our neighbors, and they reflect our values."
Thank you. Kurt?
I'm against Common Core. Number one, it's financially the wrong move because we don't need the Department of Education, which has doubled in size under President Obama from $35 billion a year to $70 billion a year. So number one, I'm against on financial principles. Number two, I'm against it because I don't like liberal brainwashing coming from Washington into our schools. Number three, I think it's unconstitutional. I just think that this should be something that state and local folks decide what is taught in the local schools, as Michael has said. And finally, it's unpractical. I have an older sister that's a teacher. So when all this came up, I called her and asked her about Common Core. And she's over 60 years old. She's been at this for a while. And she said, "Well, look, I'm all for standards. But Kurt, this will never work. On the ground, this is a disaster." So I say my older sister Carl is right. This is a disaster. So let's get rid of it.
Thank you. Ray?
Massive federal government overreach. Surprise, surprise. They want to control your health care. They want to control what you eat, drink, smoke, who you can live with, and also your children's education. So I have two problems, and these gents have mentioned. First one, that's that the curriculum is totally messed up. It should be localized. The topics, some of them, if you hear them, will curdle your cream. So the federal government has no business in any curriculum development that local officials, school districts, and states should be doing. But my bigger problem, perhaps, is with a data collection portion of Common Core that hasn't been mentioned. But the question here is going home to children. Do your parents vote? What party do they belong to? Do you have a gun in the house? And all sorts of other invasive things that are a data gathering portion of Common Core that I consider unconstitutional and fundamentally very dangerous.
Thank you. This next question is a question for which we will start with Kurt. What is your position on the liberty-security balance in a post-9/11 world?
I'm assuming you're talking about the NSA.
A broad question from a number of sources, so it's NSA, Patriot Act, militarization of police, etc.
I think the pendulum has swung too far, and I would join in the lawsuit by Rand Paul against the president for the data collection. And I think it, as Ray just said about education, this is also massive government overreach into our lives. And you know this isn't the America that I know. So I think that we as Republicans and as constitutional conservatives have got to fight this trend. We've got to fight this trend.
Thank you. Ray?
Well, I'm offended actually by some of the 9/11 things. For about 25 years of my life, I was able to board an airplane with that, and nobody said boo. And suddenly, instead of being a retired Air Force officer, I'm presumed to be a criminal. So I think 9/11 has, if not soured the populace, at least soured the thinking and the brains of those in Washington. The NSA, I think, has overreached. The agency's been around since the 1950s. For a while, when AT&T was the only game in town, every call that went out of the United States went through a big trunk in either Fort Detrick, Maryland, or someplace else over on the West Coast. So the notion that Uncle Sam is now suddenly listening to your conversations going overseas, that's a fallacy. That's been going on for 40 or 50 years. What is surprising to me is that we're suddenly amazed that the NSA's technology has kept current with the rest of technology. So spying on us within our borders, I find wrong, offensive, and an overreach. But the notion that they're collecting metadata on overseas activities, calls, emails, texts, I have a little bit of a less problem with that.
Thank you. Michael?
So, when our founding fathers contemplated what a great nation would be, they spoke of freedom and liberty. The two are not the same. We need to have both. And we shall never, ever, even in the threat of terrorism, allow domestic or foreign aggression erode our freedom and liberty. Okay? And that's what happens when we say, oh, well, if you want to be safe, you got to give up this, or you got to give up that. Folks, we have a process called due process. The Constitution contemplates warrant. If there is a need to go look closer at it as a citizen, right? And citizen is defined in the Constitution two places. One is a member of a state, and one is of the United States. Doesn't really get into much more detail than that. But if there is a reason to look at them a little closer, you go to a judge, and you get the warrant, and you do it the right way, transparently, so that there's a system of checks and balances by us.
Thank you. This question will start with Ray. What will you do to fight the HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, mandate and support legislation to safeguard religious freedom?
Well, again, a massive federal overreach. The notion that we have this thing called Obamacare, we shouldn't have it to begin with. The notion that somehow a Supreme Court justice on a very politicized Supreme Court was somehow co-opted and thinks that this thing is constitutional, I'm still amazed to this day. So there shouldn't be the issue that's part two of that. There should be no employer, no church, who has to deal with the subject of what their employees have for health insurance, whether it's based on religious issues, whether it's based on whether they own a dog or cat. The federal overreach in this area is simply wrong. Obamacare is wrong, and we shouldn't have to be fighting over birth control and whether it's a religious issue or not.
Thank you. Michael?
I would like to get rid of that entire agency. I don't think it has a constitutional foundation. You know, the Health and Human Services, I don't see a real need for it. Let's get rid of it. But in light of that, well, what can we realistically do? So I get back to my C4 plan, right? Make sure that they are constitutionally valid. Well, we know they're not, but let's get as close as we can, practically. Let's make sure that I've got the right type of friends in Congress that can help me, whether they're on the Democratic side or the Republican side. And make sure that I get on the right committees, like the Way and Means Committee, so I can actually do something and actually have a voice. Because really, as a congressman, your voice is either in the committee or at the time to vote. And then everything else is pretty much a sideline activity. So you need to be engaged. But we need to address that as a nation, and we need to have some tough love in order to get us back to greatness.
Thank you. Kurt?
I come from people who came to this country to be able to worship the way they wanted to worship, with others that believed like them, in a place of peace and protection from others and protection from the government. True to the faith of my fathers. I think that the federal government ought to stay out of people's religion. And I think we ought to be able to pray the way we want. And every night when I leave my parents' home, I kneel and pray with them. And anytime we let the government start opening up that curtain, where are they going to go next? This is a battle we have to fight on every front. This is a battle, you all, of who we are. And we can't have a government that dictates any terms of our religion. Whether it's the Hobby Lobby case, or whether it's the Little Sisters of the Poor. I urge everybody to get involved, not just in the legislative process here, but in the judicial process. We need to push back on Big Brother so we can worship our God the way we want to. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Because we are out of time now, instead of asking the last question, each one of you will now have 1 minute to make a closing statement. Since we started with Ray, we're going to start with the opposite order now. Kurt, you will go first, then Michael, then Ray. 1 minute for a closing statement. Okay.
Now, I haven't gone over my time at all since I've been here, so if I get to go for 30 seconds here, you'll give me a little slack on this one. First of all, I want to thank the friendly faces from my group that I see here. It's an awesome feeling for me in my heart that after these short time of 2 or 3 months, that some of my supporters would drive long distances to hear what we had to say and to hear what my honorable competitors have to say. Win or lose, I want to thank you all for your efforts, and I want to thank you for supporting me. At the age of 40, in 2001, I took over a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company. There was more debt than sales. The pensions were underfunded for the retirees. The health care was underfunded for the retirees. The plants, the factories were unsafe. The quality was bad. The customers were exiting, and the books were dirty. So we went about to heal that company. And it took a lot of work. And we made difficult, heart-wrenching decisions that I wish I never had to make. Did we take a federal dollar in bailout? Of course we didn't. Did I ever cash in a stock option or a restricted share for my own benefit while my people suffered? Well, of course not. It's not true. And it wouldn't be leadership. We made the right choices. And that company today is a world-class market leader, undisputed. Our government needs a turnaround. Send me to D.C. I have made the choices, and I'm willing to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so in this 60 seconds I have, I want to thank everybody for coming out. This is your civic duty, to be engaged, to be your responsibility, to be informed. Now, you might have heard that there's some polling going on, that there are certain front runners, but I got to say, as a result of those robocalls, I have decided to change my name. Okay? My name is now none of the above. So I get those calls too. You go through the 3 big dollar spenders, right? And then you get none of the above. So I offer that for your consideration is, what do you think? Who will best represent you? Don't listen to the noise of negative campaigning. Don't listen to what professional polling is doing, because it is not accurate. My name's not even on that. And you know what, folks, you saw that I'm a real guy, right? Am I a real guy?
Yeah.
Right. So what do you want to represent you in Washington? Somebody that's accessible. Somebody that you can believe in. I've been here through hurricanes. I lost my house in Charlie. I know what it means to be a Southwest Floridian. And I will always be there for you.
Thank you. Ray?
Thank you all for coming. I personally hope that the last election, I think that once the Republican was chosen, they disappeared from the face of the earth and never came out to another forum and discussed So I would hope that my two colleagues here, that if either one of them is on that June 24th ballot, that we can continue to do that with the other person who happens to be missing.
Ray, it depends on how you behave, man.
Well,
I'll be there.
Here comes scare tactics. Folks are watching this election, and the Republican Party is going to try to scare you that if you vote for the Libertarian, if you vote for me, that somehow magically the Democrat is going to win. Well, that's like Common Core math or something, because if you all vote for me, and the Libertarians vote for me, and the Independents vote for me, the Democrat doesn't win, I win. So you would win, we would all win. You don't have to fear Libertarians. We didn't make Jolly up in District 13 unelectable. We didn't pull votes from him. We didn't do it with Sarvis in Virginia. Libertarian candidates give you a choice. It gives you an opportunity to have your voice, your vote, actually heard. So when you get this big line from folks, oh, don't vote for the Libertarian because somehow somebody else will get in. No, vote your conscience, vote what you are. On my table out there, I've got a Libertarian quiz. Take it home.